Welcome to the latest edition of Before Floor, an extension of Five on the Floor. We are getting you ready for the Miami Heat against the Eastern Conference. I don't know if I'm going to call them a rival anymore, New York Knickerbockers. And they are in town for a 7:30 tip. No Ethan Skolnick running point guard. He is actually partaking in fun at City Cigar Lounge, which is downtown. You can find them at their website. That's citycigarlounge.com, I believe. Bear with me as I pull this up. I'm not as polished as Ethan. So he is at City Cigar Lounge. And yes, citycigarlounge.com is where you go. It's right next to the arena. So it's perfectly like if you want to do some pregame in there, go check Ethan out. Again, I am Greg Sylvander. With me today for the pregame show, we have Brady Hawk. You guys know him well. I'm not reading off all you guys' handles. You're going to need to do some self-promotion. We have Jonathan Ramlakan. We have Ricky J. Mark and Alejandro, who's usually just on the ones and twos. He's going to be a part of the show today as well. Thank you for the visuals on City Cigar Lounge. This looks like a super dope place. So I would definitely go and check that out prior to the game. There's the visuals again. I'm just letting them breathe. Also, before we get started with the pregame show, I want to tell you about a couple of the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network, Five on the Floor and Before Floor particularly. First, I want to kick it off with Mark Brown, PA. So if you're a young, single individual, it's important that you have a meeting with this guy, Mark Brown. Make sure you have someone in your life that you can trust to make decisions to help you get through situations, whether you're young with a family or you need him to set up plans for your kids. If anything unfortunate were to happen, if you're older and you do not have a family and you still want to have a say in where your estate goes, you want to reach out to Mark Brown, PA. It's a small firm, but it allows him to stay super laser focused on all of his clients, always available. They work with a ton of real estate and also have a title company. So they're experts in handling land or property assets. So again, this is Mark Brown, PA. Mention Five Reasons Sports Network. You'll get a free case evaluation, 954-566-5678. I've heard rumors he'll even take even better care of you than just a free case evaluation. Just give him a buzz. Again, that's markbrownpa.com. And you can reach Mark at 954-566-5678. Also, an ongoing and very loved sponsor of this program is Biscayne Bay Brewing. So they are the official brew of the Miami Marlins, Five Reasons Sports Network. They're making hay everywhere with the Marlins Lager, the Tropical Bay IPA, plenty of favorites. You're finding them everywhere now in South Florida. So make sure you ask for them by name when you go to your local spots. Let's get this name out there as much as possible. You're finding them everywhere. There's the Marlins Lager. They are absolutely bringing the heat. And again, that's Biscayne Bay Brewing. Ask for it by name. All right, fellas. So if it was 1996, this would be like a real deal matchup. And we would be like hyped and the arena would be going crazy.
Brady wouldn't be alive.
And I would be 1 year old.
There we go. Okay. So I'm dating myself considerably there. The Heat Knicks used to have such an allure to it, and now it's kind of faded to the background. But there are some interesting elements to tonight's game. One, that they are on a national broadcast. So for the national audience, Brady Hawk, and you may need an assist from Ricky J. Mark on this one, as we were talking pre-show. Who's in, who's out?
Yeah, the main one for the Heat is Tyler Hero will be returning to the lineup, which is another situation where they have a main guy, probably one of their top four guys, go out, and they survive over that stretch. This has happened, now returning. I think this is a perfect game for him to return. I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit later, but I think, as Ricky pointed out before the show, the two bigs on the Knicks, Mitchell Robinson and Noel, were questionable. And as he pointed out, Mitchell Robinson will play, and Nerlens Noel is listed as out. And I think we may look at them not playing being better in the Heat situation, but I look at this as Tyler Hero returning, Duncan Robinson's rolling. The more drop coverage, the better, I think, on this team. And the more bigs that they put out there, as good as Mitchell Robinson can be, I think this is a better overall schematic way they can go about things with this specific lineup without Kyle Lowry, when they can just utilize these type of scorers.
I think that's a great point, Tyler being the drop killer that he is. So we're going to spend most of the show talking about the Miami Heat, but we are going to give a little bit of room for the New York Knicks. So we're going to go to our resident New York Knicks expert on this next one. So New York's been kind of rough. I think they've lost 4 or 5. I found this statistic pretty interesting in doing a little pre-show work. RJ Barrett, it's in his last 13 games, he scored 27 times. He ranks second in scoring this month in this month among all players aged 21 or younger with 23 points a game. Only Anthony Edwards, who y'all know is just on a tear right now, is scoring better. From that, just as a young ascending player. Ricky, I don't really want to give the Knicks much credit, so I'm going to let you wax poetic about what we are looking for from New York. Who are the guys of focus? What are you looking for from the New York Knicks tonight?
So first things first, may his memory be a blessing. This is beyond Knicks. This is beyond Knicks or Heat. We all know what day today is. I'm not going to speak too much more on that. Other than that, may his memory be a blessing. Here's the way the Knicks are breaking down this so far. They're 23-25 this season, 6-7 since New Year's, 500 on the road overall. They've been mediocre. Okay, I can try to be a champion for them, but I'm going to give it to you straight, whether it's Knicks or Heat. Their defense has not reached the same levels as last season, and for some reason, they've averaged 11 more points in losses than wins. They've been a bit of an enigma this season. That said, their scoring has steadily gone down since October from about 110 to 101 in January. However, here's what's weird. On Wednesdays, they average about 108 points, 47 rebounds, 24 assists, 5 blocks, and 13 turnovers on Wednesdays. It's their third highest scoring average in terms of weekdays. So we might get some higher scoring, maybe. I know you brought up RJ Barrett, but the cool thing about this is that he's been solid. He's been putting up numbers of about 23.2, 6.6, and 3.5 points, rebounds, and assists while shooting 46% from the field and about 40% from three. He's been their best player in the last month, with Julius Randle putting up about 18, 10, and 5. However, he's a little less efficient. He's fifth in the league with about 147 points off drives in this calendar year. So Miami should keep an eye out on that with regards to dribble drive and dribble penetration. Mitchell Robinson is in tonight, but I'm not sure what his impact is going to be considering his injury issues. I believe he hurt his leg not too long ago. However, given his length and size, if he's able to put it together this year, I know Brady mentioned drop coverage, but that length could be a problem if he's able to close out properly on some shooters. It might cause some trouble for Bam Adebayo down low as well, because we know how much he struggles with length and size. Obi Toppin is another guy worth looking at. He will be a nuisance if he's allowed to be, but ultimately, and I'll try to wrap it up a little bit, I think the battle tonight is going to come down to the guard play, even though Kyle Lowry is continuing to be out, because the Knicks still have Emmanuel Quickley, Alec Burks, Evan Fournier, Quentin Grimes, alongside RJ, who's been playing well. They could cause trouble if they're not properly checked. I've loved what I've seen out of Grimes in his opportunities this season, and he could catch fire from deep. Now, the best way to shut down this Knicks team is to swarm the heck out of Julius Randle. He can't handle double teams late in the shot clock. Force him into as many of the teams. I believe they average about 11.8 turnovers in the last 7 games as possible. Don't let the Knicks wings get into a rhythm. Alec Burks can smack you in the face with an 18-point quarter if you're not careful. So take away those opportunities, and Miami should win this easily. And one last fun fact. The Knicks outscored the Cavs by about 20 points when Obi Toppin and Brent Grimes played together. And it should be noted that this season it's been kind of weird. I know we've been talking about a lot of rotations with Miami, but Tom Thibodeau's been kind of consistent. I know in Knick camps where they love seeing Obi Toppin play, and then Tom Thibodeau would bench him. So ultimately, this should be a Heat win tonight. And I don't know. This is going to be fun. I've been looking forward to this game all season.
Yeah, I'll give you credit. That was the most comprehensive New York Knicks breakdown I think I've ever heard all season. So I appreciate the homework that you brought to that segment, because I don't think any of the rest of us had any of that kind of New York Knicks nuggets to pass along.
Oh, they're a poverty franchise. Yeah, we've heard that before. Find something else to talk about.
Sorry, I've contributed to some of that. I apologize. It's so easy. It's low-hanging fruit. Jonathan, I'm going to go to you next, because the Heat are 17-1, Eastern Conference best record when they shoot 40% from three. They're shooting 41.5% from threes in wins compared to 31% in losses. Brady mentioned Duncan at the top. I think that that's an interesting thing to continue to watch as Tyler gets back and the trade deadline approaches. Is it as easy? Like, are we at this point in the season where it's literally as easy if they shoot well, they're going to win, and if they don't shoot well, like, are we digging into stuff that we necessarily don't have to because it's as easy as make or miss?
I don't think it's as easy as make or miss. I think when it comes down to maybe playoff games, it'll be a little more important. Regular season games, when it's just a 1-game sample size, of course, it'll be, miss or make. That's just how the league is. But I think when it comes down to it, when you have Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo as your two main focal points on offense, it's going to be making sure that the shooters around them have to be shooting well. Because if the shooters around them aren't shooting well, it's just going to make their job a lot harder. So I think that's where the shooting really has its impact, right? It has to just be, we talk about the gravity all the time. It has to pull gravity away from those guys to give them that space. Because if Jimmy Butler is getting crowded, and we know opposing teams like to put bigs, like we saw in the finals, Anthony Davis, or they switched like big guys onto him, it makes it really easy for them to do that, especially if we're not shooting well. But if we are shooting well, it makes opposing teams just have to live with that one-on-one matchup where Jimmy Butler is mostly going to cook. And then if Bam Adebayo starts taking those steps a little bit more, being a little more aggressive, like we saw when Jimmy wasn't there in the game, then that's a step for him as well. So I think that's where it comes down to, is the shooting is really more focal to Jimmy and Bam.
That's a really great point. I'm glad that you actually ended the sentence with Bam here. Brady, I'm gonna come back to you, but I want to first give you guys a quick prize pick. Although everyone in the comments lately has been like, all of Greg's prize picks never hit. So maybe you guys don't want this. So do the opposite if that's what you want to do. They got Bam at 9 rebounds tonight. And again, you got to get your picks in 26 minutes and 5 seconds to get in on the Heat Knicks game. I like him over 9 rebounds tonight. I think that this is a night where Bam gets very active. We saw Jimmy get the triple-double against the Lakers. That was a lot of fun. Brady, as Tyler gets back and kind of, I think he can start to regain the scoring prowess and be that option off the bench. How do you expect the team to kind of integrate him back? Is it easy as he just comes back, plugs in, and he's that option off the bench scoring the way that he's been scoring? I feel like they kind of have needed it, right? They've looked a little clunky at times. So I guess I'm interested to pick your brain on Hero being integrated back into the lineup after an extended absence.
Yeah, I think when Bam went out, Yurtseven stepped in and they kind of picked up for him. We've seen Jimmy go out, Caleb Martin's pick up for him. Kyle goes out, Gabe Vincent picks up for him. I don't think there's a guy on this roster until Victor Oladipo comes back that can pick up for Tyler Hero. And we've kind of seen that. Why I think that it is just as simple as him plugging in and kind of going is because the guy they've utilized in his role is Kyle Guy. It's been pretty much a light version of what he does. So I think it's pretty simple. They've utilized him in similar ways, just a lot less usage offensively. So I do think it's just as simple as that. And like I said, I really think this matchup defensively falls into his favor. I think this matchup that he can get to his spots. I think they're going to put top level. They're better defenders on him. But I think if he just gets to the mid range, I think this is one of those games where you kind of see that fall into that side of the floor. But I do want to say one thing about the other side of the floor. I think the Knicks offense, the Heat's defense fits this matchup perfectly, in my opinion. And when we talk about a lot of things down the stretch of games, where does Miami go? They've had issues. You've seen the Jimmy 3, the Jimmy missed the layup, and we talk about where do they go late in games. I feel comfortable late in a game like this one, if this one's tight, because Ricky kind of pointed it out a little bit earlier that when things go down late in the shot clock, when things go down late in the game, what do? They go to Julius Randle, strong side, high post. And why does that fit Miami's defensive scheme? Well, like we saw last game, they're totally, like they did to LeBron, totally going to just double him on the switches. And they're just going to double him when they do that and rely on the backside rotations that they've been really good at all season. So I feel like late in the game, I don't think there's a better matchup for them to face in that theory with the defensive scheme they're going with right now. Obviously, it would be different before when they didn't have Bam, but I think this one fits it really well. So I'm interested to see that. I don't know how it's going to be, if they're going to be close late in this game, but I think if it is, I honestly lean Miami more than I would another game.
So pardon this break.
The game is already over.
Alejandro, over under 2 players dancing to that song tonight in the midst of a victory in the late fourth quarter. Over or under 2 players?
Yeah, I'm going to say over, but I was going to mute you because we're going to get suspended because you're playing music here.
Oh, it was for 4 seconds. I know sampling rules. I used to make hip hop albums, and I know the
Yeah. So
sampling
that's
rules.
fine. And 1 or 2 seconds, it's okay. Don't do anymore.
Yeah.
I'm going with the over.
I got reprimanded. Look at that. Ethan's away, and how's that saying go? When the cat's away, the mice play, or something like that.
Something like that.
I'm
Yes.
I'm going completely unconventional here because I think we've talked Heat Knicks enough now. I would like to go around the room and get predictions for tonight. Any other nuggets you guys have, but also, and Ricky, I'm starting with you, and we'll go around the room here. Favorite Kobe Bryant moment. Since you wore the jersey, you sparked the idea. So prediction, you actually already gave it. You told me earlier that the Heat are going to win. So let's just go straight to the Kobe moment, unless you got any other nuggets for us.
No, I mean, at this point, the Heat are just overall a better team. They're having a better season, and they have a better roster. The Knicks overachieved last season, something I said back then, and they are entering this season having not improved enough. Very much like how we saw Miami last season entering that year, not realizing that the rest of the conference went ahead and they didn't really advance. Favorite Kobe moment, however, I'd have to say Game 4, 2000 NBA Finals when Shaq fouled out in overtime or late in regulation, and he pretty much took them to a 3-1 lead and ultimately a 4-2 series win. It's a memory that gives me chills, but honestly, as I'm saying this, the memory that kills all of them is Kobe to Shaq, Game 7, about 35 seconds left. I get chills still watching that replay, and I'm getting chills right now just thinking of it.
I love that. That's a great moment. Alejandro.
Yeah. I'm going to go with one in an all-star game. I'm going to get away a little bit from the finals because they won a couple of titles, and I was a Lakers fan growing up just because they were winning, and I was a kid and I just didn't know any better.
That's what they do.
I don't remember the exact year, but I remember Kobe Bryant just taking over and not letting the new generation get that all-star game MVP. I don't remember the year. I will have to look it up and do my research, but I'm going to stay with that moment because I think sometimes, and I remember early in the 2000s, they used to play the all-star games for real. It was not like a walk in the park. They used to really play that game, and that's how it should be, in my opinion. And I remember just Kobe Bryant leading the West, and I think that's my favorite moment.
That's a great moment because there's video floating around Twitter today of them in the locker room prior to that game. Yeah. And Timmy Hardaway, Miami Heat, Timmy Hardaway in a Miami Heat jersey is actually my favorite all-star jerseys, or when they all just wear their regular game jerseys to the
when they were in New York.
Yes, exactly. And Michael Jordan said, "Oh, that kid from LA, he don't let the game come to him. He just go out there and take it." And it's just cool to listen to MJ and Timmy and Penny Hardaway was in there. So I'm glad you brought that up, Alejandro. Jonathan, predictions for tonight and favorite Kobe Bean moment.
Predictions, I'm going to take the Heat. Typically, the Heat struggle against better offensive teams, even if they're not the best defensive teams, just because we get, outshot sometimes. Knicks are bottom 5 in points in the paint, assists, points overall. They're pretty bad offensively, and they're not good at passing the ball either. Like Ricky said, should be a pretty easy night on the house. Favorite moment for me, I'd probably have to say winning it in 08 because that's the first one I actually remembered. I was a little bit older, so I didn't like it at the time, but now remembering that, but overall, just as a Heat fan, growing up, it was always Wade versus Kobe. And, he may not be the greatest player of all time, but to me, he's the greatest competitor of all time. And he's the greatest competitor this game's ever seen. And it's just so sad that he's gone. And I hope that his legacy just continues, man, because what he did for this game, no one else will ever, I don't think will ever leave that kind of impact that he did.
Brady, talk to us.
Yeah, first of all, with the Heat, I think this is one of the same type of games we saw against Portland where it's just a defensive domination, as I pointed out before. And I think this is another game where I think Duncan Robinson chains some good things together offensively. As I said, the drop coverage with Tyler Hero. When Duncan Robinson is hitting threes, there's not a better drop killer on this team just because it's literally one defender you have to take out with a screen, and PJ's usually the one doing it with his offensive lineman block. So I think that's something to look out for. Favorite Kobe moment, Ricky's pointing out 2000 moments, which I was 3 years away from being born. So I'm definitely going the final game of his career because that's the one that's fresh in my memory all the time. But I just don't think there's a better time for a player to go out like that, like just like what was it, 61 points, like just the way he did it, even in a bad year, just being able to take that team and win against the Jazz. I just feel like that was one of the better all-time performances, just single game. So I have to go with that one.
That is a great one, and I love how you keep it relevant to what you were able to actually watch with your own eyes. I wish a lot more people would actually do that, and I don't mean to say that like a Mr. Old Grumpy guy, but just I think a lot of people talk out of turn sometimes. So I appreciate that. All right, so I guess I'm up. The Heat were 3-0 against the Knicks last year. They're 19-7 against New York since 2013-14, which was the last year, the Big Three. They haven't played the Knicks yet, and they haven't lost. They've won 5 straight at home against the Knicks, which I tweeted out earlier today, and everybody says I'm jinxing them. Guys, I am not Ethan J. Skolnick. I do not jinx the Miami Heat. I'm spiritually connected to this squad. Don't put me in that space. So the Heat get a victory here. And my favorite Kobe moment. So I used to actually be one who always was trying to tell everybody that Dwayne was just as good as Kobe. So like I just being transparent, like during Kobe's career, I wasn't a hater of Kobe ever. I actually own a champion size, probably 36, because I was a lot skinnier back then. Purple number 8 Kobe jersey. Like that's one of the few non-Heat jerseys I owned. This is like a weird thing to remember, but as we went around the room, it popped in my head. He blew his Achilles out, and it was a bad moment. And he still shot his free throws. And I know like anyone could probably, they say, oh, it's easy to shoot free throws. You're just standing there. But there was something about the way that he went about that was very much like, I'm doing this to ensure that I can return to the game. Because you guys know the rule. If you don't shoot your free throws, you ain't coming back in. And there was just something more like he was signifying something there. And I just thought that was powerful in itself. Kobe, ultimate, he lit Jalen Rose up for 81. So every time I listen to Jalen talk, that's always funny as well. So let's call out the 81-point game. I don't know that we're
commercial
ever
was legendary.
Is anyone going to ever get 81 or more again?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's going to happen. This is a 3-point shooting league, and Clay got close a couple times. They benched him in like the fourth quarter. He would have gotten it. It's only a matter of time. The more threes we shoot in this league, it's going to happen. It's not going to mean or feel the same as all those shots. Most of the shots being field goals, 2-point field goals. He shot a lot.
Very true. So yeah, that's where I'm going, just because it just again signifies the overcoming adversity nature of the Mamba mentality, as they call it. So yeah, thank you guys for joining us. No Ethan Skolnick, so this wasn't as cohesive as it normally is. But welcome to Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. No, I was trying to do the Ethan Skolnick thing there. Y'all didn't get it. Sorry. See, I'm just not the same host. Thank you for joining us. Want to shout out our sponsors one more time. Biscayne Bay Brewing. If you're at the game tonight, ask for it. Find it at your local spots. Yep, there you go with the visual there. Support a local brewery, y'all. Come on, let's keep it local. And then also Mark Brown, PA, for all of your financial planning needs, real estate. If you need a lawyer just to protect your best interest, 954-566-5678. Mention 5 Reasons Sports Network. Free case evaluation coming to you. Again, thank you for joining us. Alejandro, is something going to be pumping from the channel directly following us here? Or
yeah, we're going to do Eric Spoelstra's pregame conference, and then we're going to do a little bit of the Oladipo episode that you guys did on 5 on the Floor. So that's
wonderful. So you got stuff coming to you. So stick right here, y'all. But thank you for joining us. And unlike Ethan, I shall close the program by saying, let's go Heat.
Nice.
Caleb, just the way he's playing, starting, now he's coming off the bench, just bringing in every single game, anything surprise you with what he's doing, or is it just continuing to exceed expectations?
Yeah, I mean, we just want him to be open, to developing the relationship and see where, he could develop. He's really been a breath of fresh air, for everybody, the staff, the players, the locker room. Just has such a great personality. He's so laid back, off the court, and then all of a sudden he just turns into somebody else, in any kind of practice session, and then you get into a game, he just becomes electric. It's been fun getting to know him and seeing him perform, in that Heat uniform.
Coach, the honest part of your positioning now is it doesn't really matter until the middle of April. But what is the significance for this group of being in this top spot in the East right now?
It's very competitive, and that should be fun. And you don't have to obsess about the standings, and everybody will say, just want to be healthy, when you get to the playoffs. But look, these 6 months of a regular season, you do want to have something that you're playing for. Competitors, like taking on big challenges. I know how we all felt at the beginning of December when we started to go through injuries and everybody, going in and out with COVID. It's a little bit of uncertainty, and so we just wanted to continue to compete and see where it would end up. There'll be a lot of movement, in the next few months, but our guys enjoy it.
That's for the way you've been playing, particularly over the last 10. What have you liked most about the all-ball screen action and what it's done for your offense, particularly for your shooting?
There's a selflessness to it. There's an IQ to it. You can try to script it and develop it all you want, but if you don't have the kind of players that want to help somebody else get an open shot, then all of it's for naught. And we have a lot of guys that want to help somebody else play well and then enjoy their success. That's a tough thing to find.
Eric, a couple of your 25-year-olds were asked about the Heat-Knicks rivalry, and they really weren't very familiar.
Yeah.
Like some of our older guys who've lived it. Is that something that just will remain indelible every time you see that uniform?
For us, yeah. Come on, my boss.
Mm-hmm.
And we lived those moments. Where I saw it, they were showing a bunch of highlights of those old Heat Knicks series, and it feels like a different lifetime ago for me, because I was watching all those moments in the video room. But boy, they were intense, and it's not as if those emotions leave you, and it's good for sport, the rivalry. But of course, our young guys don't remember stuff. We used to, a few years ago, we used to educate all of our players about that. But that's not really, that's just too Miami. They're going over the top. We don't do that anymore.
I know the offensive coach doesn't change much on our team, but what's different about the football training?
When they are,
Yeah.
or not.
When they are.
What's the question?
What's different about the way you're going to generate the looks you're going to want?
Well, I think overall, it's pretty similar. It's more, guys trying to help each other, get open looks. Quite naturally, it's going to look, a little bit differently, but they're so unique, and each of them in their own way, with their ability to attack, the pressure on the defense, but also have the ability to find open guys, whether they're in the post, elbow, or off the dribble. And they each can do it. That just helps your offense become a lot more dynamic. They're both really willing passers, willing and capable passers. Always helps when your best players fire themselves.
All right, we'll go via Zoom to Rebecca Harlow.
Hey, Coach. Nice to see you via
Sorry for my
Zoom.
laptop. Sorry.
As you guys are controlling the East right now, how would you describe the way that Bam has really impacted this particular roster this season?
He's the heart and soul of our team, and I appreciate you saying that, Rebecca, but I wouldn't necessarily say we're controlling the East. It's very, very competitive. But Bam, just makes us super dynamic. He makes us uncommon because of his versatility on both ends of the court. There's not many guys in this league, particularly his position, that can do what he does. And we're grateful, for all of that versatility. And he's just a great teammate. The way he models leadership, is what it's all about.
And Coach, Noel and Robinson both listed as questionable for the Knicks. But when you look at Robinson, the way he's rounded back into form coming off of those injuries, what makes him a dangerous player?
it puts incredible pressure on the rim. Is a vertical threat, in a different way than most can. You can throw it anywhere, and he'll find a way to get his hands on it. And a lot of times that's above or behind your frontline defense. Great offensive rebounder. I think he helps their best players. So we'll have to account for him for sure.
Coach, thank you.
All right, Coach, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Advertise your business in a.
This is our first ever preheat happy hour. We're going to be there starting at about 4 o'clock. We know that Miami traffic sucks. I'm out. They got more than 300.
Down the Biscayne. Yikes. 5 on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars. Wearing bubble frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing. Got it all band. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat we trust. Inspire have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back on 5 on the Floor. Make sure you check out recent episodes. I just posted an episode of Floor is Yours, which got everybody all heated, so to speak, where we talked about whether or not you would keep the team as is. Adam Barai appeared there in total darkness and stirred things up a little bit, although everybody is blaming me. So go to our podcast feed, check it out. Also, the episode that Alex and I did after the Heat beat the Lakers on Sunday is up there as well. Today, we're going to talk about one player. That's it, okay? One player, Victor Oladipo. It's time to start discussing this. We're at the end of January. Today at practice, he went through a pretty full workout with everybody watching. The Heat have not had a lot of home practices this year. You can count them on basically one hand. And so the media has not gotten a look at a lot of stuff that typically you would get a look at. Not that the media gets to see all of practice anyway, but at least you get to see sort of the last 5 to 10 minutes typically, and then, guys working out while Eric Spoelstra and other players start to talk. That has not been something that's happened a whole bunch this year. Again, because of COVID, didn't happen last year, didn't happen in the bubble. Today it happened. And when it happened, Vic was going through enough that it got people excited. Barry Jackson reported of the Miami Herald that they're still on track for February. That is the timetable we've talked about. We talked about how it could be sped up a little bit, but it looks like it's going to land sometime in February for when he's in Heat shape. And so what we're going to do for the purpose of this episode, we're going to break it into 2 parts. Part 1 is, okay, what does this mean for him and for the team? What can he provide that maybe they're missing? And we'll talk about this from a strategic sense. And then the second part of the episode, we're going to talk about, okay, what does it mean for the future of the Heat if Oladipo performs at a high level? And also, what does it mean in terms of the chemistry of this team? So let's start right here. I'm going to go to Brady first today. I'll mention more about this later, but Eric Rubenstein sponsors the appearances by Brady Hawk, so thank him. And again, check out 954-829-ERIC. That's 954-829-ERIC for Eric if you need any kind of a personal injury situation, whether it's a slip and fall, a car accident, or anything else along those lines. Brady, from a tactical standpoint, what is the single biggest thing that, say, an 80% to 85% Victor Oladipo could provide that this team is missing?
I think when we're talking about what they're missing, we know what this team has. They have 2 shooters in Duncan and Strus. They have multiple big men. They have a couple 3-and-D guards who can kind of do different things. But the one thing that I think they only have a singular guy in, and it's Tyler Hero, a guy who can come off a curl and kind of make a play. And I think, we've seen different guys they've had over the years be able to do it, and they've picked up so many other parts. But we were just talking about before this, and I'm sure Alex will go over in a little bit, the rim pressure numbers are pretty low this season. And I think a big thing is when you have Victor Oladipo back, you can put him in so many different spots. That's the biggest thing to note. The other thing, I mentioned Tyler Hero being the only other guy. I think when you're looking on paper, there's no better build to put next to Tyler Hero off the bench. Like, we're talking about a defensive guy. We're talking about a guy that his 3-point attempts always go up after he comes back from an injury. Tyler Hero's usage on the ball is rising. Obviously, we know Tyler can play off the ball. Like, I feel like that combo can actually be used really well together. Obviously, we know they stagger. But that's one thing to mention. And speaking of staggering, last season, I think this is a point that needs to be made. Last season, the big thing was they had to kind of survive the non-Jimmy and Bam minutes. And even when they didn't, Jimmy or Bam, both one had to be on the floor, and it was just a big mess. This is a team that has a ton of creators when Victor Oladipo comes back. They have Kyle Lowry, they have Tyler, they have Jimmy, they have Bam. They are now going to have Oladipo. And even PJ can be a creator at times, which is not something I expected to say before the season. But they have all these different creators, and I think just adding that element just leaves Eric Spoelstra with ultimate flexibility. When we talk about who they can plug in as those fifth guys, those fourth guys, the Caleb Martins, the Struces, the Vincents, you can do whatever you want. Like, you can be as creative as you want when you have that many creators, and you can just play by match if you can play by what you need. So I think those are kind of the biggest things. But ultimately, when we talk about the baseline for Victor Oladipo's minutes, I think it's going to come down to the defensive end. Like, I don't think there's any other way around it. Like, we know how he's going to shoot, the different things he's going to do. But if he's defending at a high level, his minutes are going to be very different. His closing lineup minutes are going to be very different. The way he's used is going to be very different. That I just feel like that's the big thing. We talk about how healthy he's going to be, but if he can clamp down and he can, as we were talking about before the show, in a very rotation-reliant defense, that it's a bunch of backline things. They blitz a bunch at the top of the key. If you're not the blitzer, you're on the back line constantly rotating. If you're not having that quick speed and able to make those plays that he once was, I feel like that's the biggest thing to mention when you talk about him returning.
All right, again, 80 to 85%, Alex. You were the guy who really wanted him last year, from what I remember.
Hey, man, PJ.
You were right. Well, I know that, but we're not supposed to mention other players today. This is a Victor Oladipo episode. So you wanted him. We saw it for only 4 games. That's it.
4 glorious games.
We saw 1 dunk, right? We saw some rim pressure. We saw some erratic shooting. Their offensive rating was pretty awful with him in the 4 games. Again, it was a tiny sample size. And as we found out, he was not really totally healthy. It was not attached properly. There was a lot that went on behind the scenes that came to that, and then he went out. I'm going to assume he's going to be better off this year than last year, Alex, because they gave him more time, and the surgery apparently has been, quote-unquote, successful. So you tell me, from what you saw last year, that 4-game sample size, what it is that you think we can see more of this time than last year, and particularly what we didn't see maybe because he wasn't totally healthy that you think he can add this time.
Well, I think last season, as we found out later on towards the end when they got swept by the team that they beat in 5 the season before, obviously the Bucks added Drew Holiday, all the context and all that. But I'm just saying that team, last year's Heat team, was missing a lot. And at the time, I loved the Victor Oladipo trade idea. I wanted them to go out and do it. I was hopeful that he would be, you know, a nice contributor for them in helping turn around their season a little bit. But the thing is like they were missing just too much, I think, on both ends of the floor. This team has kind of plugged in those holes, as we talked about all season. And I think now, as Brady was talking about, he's kind of free to roam in a system and something that's kind of covering him on both ends. Not that he needs to be covered for on defense or anything like that, but the pressure is not on him to come in and be not a savior, but something like that. The way he came in last year, it's like you're expecting a lot out of Victor Oladipo, who we didn't know at the time was playing with, a torn quad? Is that what it was? He was playing with it at the time, and despite it, was getting to the rim at a pretty high rate. And we were looking at his shot dashboard coming into this podcast, and like he was getting to the rim a lot last season as a member of the Rockets before even coming here. And then in those 4 games, you saw him kind of here and there making plays. And I like what Brady said, like coming off of curls and being able to make something happen, right? And even though him and Tyler don't play the same way, there is something similar about them because both guys like to operate in pick and rolls, like to get to their spots and and I think like this is a team that's going to make it easier on him. When you talk about the screening they've got between Bam, Dedmon, PJ, they're not all the same pick and roll finishers, but they all provide value in that way as screening and finishers that they just didn't have last year. I think Vic is not going to be running a lot of high pick and rolls, but if he is, that's because Spo trusts him to, and that's obviously a great sign because I don't think Spo would be giving him that opportunity if he didn't think he could go and make plays out of that, because that's not something they do very much. So I think he can come in, they'll run some handoffs and curls from him, and he'll make stuff happen out of there. Kind of as long as he's getting into the paint, making stuff happen, I think it'll be easier from there. I like the catch and shoot stuff. We were looking at it in the shot dashboard. Last season, he shot 37.5 from 3. When you talk about catch and shoot, the year before it was 27.5. The year before it was 40. he's been an up and down 3-point shooter in his career, but as far as the catch and shoot part, I don't really have too much concerns about that. And so I just think he's a really nice luxury to add to this team at this point. As long as he's touching paint and making stuff happen and really giving it all on both ends, like I think he's going to be a pretty good contributor.
So that's the key word here, Greg, as we go to you before we go to the break, is last year we felt that Victor Oladipo was a necessity, right? Because they lacked so much. I mean, when you watched Trevor Ariza play for the Lakers on Sunday, I think it put into context how overmatched that team was last year, right? But the word that Alex used now is luxury, right? That's a word we usually use in the context of how much money is Harrison going to spend, right? But
that's kind of the theme of the season too, right?
That's for after the break, Ethan.
That's for after the break. but okay, in terms of the word luxury with Victor Oladipo, do you view him, has it moved to that for you? He's not necessity. This team has won this year without him. But is he merely a luxury at this stage? In other words, if he comes back and he doesn't supplant kind of the combination, because the things Alex and Brady are describing here are things that they've gotten to some degree, right, from Gabe Vincent and Caleb Martin in particular, right? Those two guys, okay? But and so you may be able to replace those two guys with him to some degree, right? I mean those may be the two that lose the minutes if you're going to say that Strus is kind of the shooter protection for Duncan, right? And you know that Tyler and PJ and Jimmy and Lowry and Bam are going to get their minutes. Is he a mere luxury at this stage?
I mean, I think the short answer is yes, because I mean they're at the top of the conference without him, but I think there is things that he can add, and there are elements of his game that I think in high leverage situations against the best teams, that there's things he can do that this team, I think maybe, you see Caleb get to the rim and stuff like that. And you think that maybe they've solved some of that with some of the other guys that they've brought in, but they're still 25th in the league in shots, within 4 feet of the rim. So, I mean, they definitely have some room to grow there. And this is the other part about Depot that I think is really interesting. In Houston, he had his highest usage rate of his career, and he's not going to come in with that. And I think that there is a part of Oladipo. This is going to sound funny, but he gets to be a role player. He doesn't have to come in and be expected to get 19 a game. He gets to really fill a role. And I think at this stage of his career, if he can fill a role for this team and they win, that does a lot for his stock. So I just think that it's an interesting thing where he doesn't need to do more than maybe he's capable of initially. But I mean, the short answer to all of what you're asking is that they don't obviously need him, but I think this is how we should conceptualize it. This is their deadline edition. This is what they're essentially if you want to just put it in transaction, they're trading a future second that they'll never convey because it's a fake trade for Victor Oladipo to show up after the trade deadline. So, I mean, to from my perspective, it absolutely is gravy, but it's gravy that can make the dish that much better.
It does raise the question, if they could make a trade deadline maneuver this year, if they would acquire a player like Victor Oladipo, or if they would acquire a player at a different position, because we've been talking about him as the trade deadline acquisition, and it does seem like it's going to be right around that time, either just before or just after, right? So it's interesting to kind of consider that. Is this the kind of guy they would go after? Is this this rim pressure issue that they have, where they're in the bottom 10 in rim pressure? Is that what they would most try to address? Or would they most try to address getting another big for the rotation, particularly with what's happened with Markieff Morris? It's an interesting question, but it also, again, puts into perspective how little they really need this year as opposed to past years, which is kind of why our whole trade episode on Floor Yours was fun but ridiculous. But there's one other point I want to make before we go to the break, and then we're going to come back and put this into a larger context of Vic's future. But it's this. LeBron James, after the game the other day, and we've talked about this on the pod about how highly he spoke of the Heat organization, and Spoelstra is talking privately about that. No, we're not doing a LeBron episode here, okay? But obviously there was a lot. LeBron wanted to make it clear with his IG post and everything about Miami and all the rest. If you noticed after the game, if you watched him, which I did, okay, he sometimes he'll dip into the tunnel. He went over to the Heat people. Again, maybe this is a little performative because it's LeBron, but obviously the hug for Spo, the hug for PJ Tucker, the hug for Bam, okay, which they've developed a relationship over time, the big hug for Jimmy and UD, obviously, but also Vic. There was a long conversation between LeBron and Vic, okay? And this is why I'm bringing, this may play into Vic's future, who knows, all right? But the reason I'm bringing that up is Victor Oladipo's best moments as a pro were that playoff series against LeBron. He nearly single-handedly beat. If you look at that Indiana team, he almost beat the Cavs with LeBron by himself, okay? He carried them in multiple games. And that is the one thing here as I look at this, because I say, well, they can live without Vic, okay? They can live even without an 85% Vic because you have these two-ways, okay, former two-ways and current two-ways who've been incredible, okay, no question. Martin, obviously Strus, but also Vincent. But they haven't done it at that level against that guy carrying a team. And so that is the one reason that I think that maybe they would go for a player like this. Maybe they would. Somebody else who's been seasoned in that. I know that he kind of quit against the Heat the next year and all the rest, or 2 years later, but he did do that then against the best player in the world that was heavily favored, and he almost upset them by himself. A couple of those games they lost were really close at the end, and he was getting the ball in all of those situations. So it's just something to consider. The fact that LeBron would spend 5 minutes talking to him after the game shows you the respect that was developed during that series. All right, we're going to come back. We're going to talk about Vic's future in that context. And also, is anybody concerned about the rotation issues that may develop, or is this kind of just one of these things we're sort of just making up because we don't really have anything to complain about right now? But before we do, something you can complain about, okay, is mold. All right. Fire damage, water damage, all of that stuff. And when that happens, you got to find a reputable, fully licensed, insured, and certified contractor. That's our friends over at Water Cleanup of Florida. They're based in Boca, right close to Yamato Road. But they service the entire area. They're there for you 24 hours a day. They'll give you specialized, fast, and reliable service. They can help mitigate the stress and impact that an unexpected disaster may cause. And they got more than 60 years of combined experience in that office. So reach out to Michael, Robert, and the rest of the team. They are big Miami Heat fans as well. They make the cleanup and insurance claim process painless and hassle-free. They're the official sponsors of Greg Sylvander's appearances here. I always say this, okay, and I'm going to say it in a second after I give you the phone number. Personal cell for Michael is 954-579-0356. That's 954-579-0356, or go to watercleanupflorida.com. If you've got the schmutz,
they got the guts.
All right, and now we're back on 5 on the floor, so check them out at Water Cleanup of Florida. Let's go to the future. I'm going to start with Greg on this one because, he and I are the narrative transaction guys, although Alex dabbles in that as well.
Guilty pleasures.
But
absolutely.
What is at stake for Vic now? Because when I interviewed him and took the infamous photo of him at Media Day, and I just asked him about being at the bottom. I mean, this has been an ego shot. There's no question. I mean, Victor Oladipo thought he was getting max contract. His previous agents, he's gone through so many representatives, okay? But like they turned down max type deals from Houston. He signed for the minimum with Miami. None of us really thought he was going to do that, even though we all said that he probably wouldn't get a big offer somewhere else, because it is, again, it's a sign of modesty that a lot of people around the league honestly didn't think Vic had. And he took this deal, this prove it deal, but also he has been from the first scrimmage that Brady and I went to this thing with, him dancing to, am I going to pronounce this correctly? Pepas, okay, or whatever during the game, which has become the new Sign of the Nation Army. And I like the song, but it's going to drive me effing crazy, okay, about a month from now.
That's how we know it's good.
If it drives me crazy, if they play it too much. Well, you know what's going to happen, Alex? they're going to play it while they're winning, and then they're going to have a bad team like 5 years down the road and still play it like they did with Seven Nation Army and completely destroy the song. Because every time they play,
you hate seeing Hassan and JJ and Dion jumping
doing
around
Seven
the Seven
Nation Army. Okay, that is and look, and every time that they played that damn song, the other team went on an 11-0 run. Okay, and it didn't seem to matter.
But you see, the difference now is, I don't know if you've noticed this, the Heat only play Peppers when it's like obvious.
When they're winning.
It's very
Next
very
time they blow a 13-point lead, Alex, okay, playing that song, they got to shelf. They did, right. They got to shelve the song. But he has been into it. Okay. He has been like prime cheerleader from minute one for this team. He is fully engaged on this team. I don't think it's all an act, right? So what is his future here, Greg?
That's a really great question, because he's making $2.3 million. Cap hold of 1.7, so he's literally he accounts for as little as he can be on the Heat's books next year, and he really bet on himself by coming back, by not accepting another offer elsewhere where maybe he would get higher usage, etc., more minutes. He's betting on himself because the Heat have this unique advantage of bird rights where they could exceed the salary cap to retain him. Luxury tax, concerns would be there, but they could obviously. They control the situation. If they want to keep Victor Oladipo, they can. Why he's betting on himself is that, he has to play really, really, really well for them to actually take him up on those bird rights and exceed the salary cap in a really aggressive way to retain him. So to me, this is about him playing himself into the conversation for one of the exceptions that Miami's going to be using. And maybe they won't slot him into the exception because they can use his bird rights and they can spend the exception elsewhere. But I'm talking about how much money they're going to spend. You're talking about a biannual exception of $3.9 million. A non-taxpayer mid-level of $10 million is about what they're estimating right now. We'll see where the cap comes in when that time comes. If he can get himself into the type of position where he could get $4 million, I think that's a really, that's about as good as we can expect. I just don't know that he's going to do anything from whenever he starts playing to the end of the season, unless they make a run all the way to the championship. And he's a huge part of a lot of the back end of that run, where it's going to be so fresh in people's minds that people are throwing out full mid levels at Victor Oladipo. So I think that, I've waxed poetic on this enough, so I'm gonna pass to you guys here. But I guess I just would say this is that, and Adam brought this up on Floor's Yours. When you have Gabe Vincent, Omer Yurtseven, and these guys, Max Strus, already locked up at minimum deals next year, you have to weigh who's going to outplay their contracts versus who isn't, and where you should spend and where you shouldn't. So I don't know that his future is actually in Miami. The sign and trade stuff is not really viable because it would hard cap the Heat in a season when they can't be hard capped. It's just not the right move. So I personally don't think that it's likely that he sticks around, but I could be totally wrong. Do you guys disagree?
Well, I'll go to Alex on this. The thing about it is the bird rights are a great tool for the Heat to use, and again, prospective tool for Vic, but it still counts in the tax. It doesn't count against the cap, but it counts against the tax. And we know that Mickey's going to pay tax next year because they're heading towards that with some of these contracts, and the Hero extension is coming around the corner, and you're still paying Duncan unless you trade him. And so even with your guys outperforming, whether it's Caleb, Max, or Omer or any of the others, the bill is coming due for this team. This is one of the reasons they don't want to pay the bill this year, right? Because they don't want to put themselves in that position. But Alex, wouldn't it, let's say that the Heat make a deep run and Vic is a factor. He's not the lead factor, but he's a factor. He's given them 13 to 15 minutes a game of really quality play, and there are a couple of games that he pops, okay, that and Spo stays with him. Isn't it more likely that some bad team out there is going to talk itself into the idea that Vic is healed enough now? Let's say, I don't know, I always say Sacramento, but they actually have some personnel there. But maybe it's in New Orleans, okay? Or maybe it's something like that. I mean, they've dealt with one guy that can't stay healthy. But one of those...
desperate organization.
Well, one of those
Sixers,
type... Right, the Sixers. One of those type team... Well, the Sixers, yeah. But, Morey...
They're waiting on Harden again.
Well, they're waiting on Harden and Jordan, Prime Jordan and Prime Pippen. But, Alex, what if they... Isn't it more likely if he pops in that way... that it's okay, the Heat are thank you, and he's thank you, You help me get back to a certain point, and some team gives him the full mid-level next year.
Perhaps. So I'm not all the way up on the salary cap stuff and what they can or can't do as far as bringing him back versus other guys if they have to make decisions, things like that. To me, it's more of a situation like if he really pops and he's even better than what you're describing, he's like a 20-minute a game contributor, perhaps more in some games where he's really feeling it. He closes, things like that, where like there's even more indicators of that. Then yeah, I think that's kind of where I see it. I don't really see it happening in a small role like what you're talking about, but if he has indicators that he can take on a higher load and go back to some of what he was doing before, then maybe even then it's kind of like I don't think a team is trying to grab a lead guard or anything close to that on the almost like the bargain bin of free agency, because the mid-level isn't nothing, but like how much can a team really expect if that's what they're investing in? My whole thing with Depot is like, we talked about this factor before, is like other teams not wanting certain Heat players because they think that the Heat have kind of maxed out everything that they can get from them. So I think that kind of plays in here too, because I think like he can look really well.
Alex, let me stop you there. Why would that play in with him? Because it's different from like, okay,
it depends on how he's looking, I think.
Yeah, but Caleb Martin comes here, and Caleb Martin, as he admitted to us, was not very good last year, right? Like Caleb was forced to take a two-way. He's never done anything significant in the league until now. Max Strus is a guy that they found, okay? Obviously, Omer is a guy, he's almost in his mid-20s, okay, that
no
they
team
found.
wanted Oladipo last year at the trade
deadline.
Yeah,
but everybody knows what he is when he's healthy. That's the thing. Like, people saw that. So I don't know that...
There was such a question mark around him. Nobody even bothered to invest in him in the summer. Nobody bothered to invest in him at the trade deadline.
No, but see, that's why I'm saying we're getting these two things, I think, mixed up a little bit. There's one thing to say that the Heat brought out talent in somebody that nobody else saw. Again, the Struses, the Martins, the Omers, etc. But it's another thing to say, well, he just got healthy with the Heat. Like now he's back to what he was. Like I don't feel like other teams are going to look at him and say, like if he clears medically, right, and he has a good attitude about this situation, I actually think that plays to his favor, where another team is like, well, look, the Heat couldn't he's rehab now. The doctors here, the trainers did a great job, but we can handle that, okay? And we know what kind of a player he is, and we can give him a bigger role than the Heat did. Alex, wouldn't that be more, and we'll pivot to Brady here because there's another different question I want to get to for him, but wouldn't that be more I would think?
Yeah, I think it's really a different case, like you're saying, than Caleb, Max Strus, the Gabe Vincents of the world. I just think Oladipo, with the fact that nobody wanted him, I feel like he's going to have that chip on his shoulder. He's obviously wanted to play for the Heat for a long time, so I think there will be some benefit of the doubt there. I'm sure the Heat, like as they do with their guys, are in communication when it comes to this aspect of like their future. And I'm sure a lot of it has to do with how he plays when he comes back. So it's almost like show me, don't tell me. But even then, I'm sure that there has to be some sort of agreement there that it's like, we're going to do right by you. We didn't invest in you for nothing. We're going to do right by you if you show us that you're worth it. So it's almost like a secondhand concern for me. It's more about what he does when he's on the court. And just before I give it back to you guys, I was doing a little bit more digging here on some Oladipo stuff and found some really good indicators, man, because I haven't looked at his stuff in a while. And like, what have I told you? Obviously, this is a really, really small sample size. He only played 4 games for the Heat. But in those 4 games, he had the highest free throw rate of his career. Obviously, that's not something that would have stuck over a season's worth of time, but I think that's really interesting. Basically like playing on a torn quad. And then you look at the steals percentage, the block percentages were really high when he was here. I was looking at some of his stats on dunksandthrees.com. Shout out to them. And his estimated plus minus on defense was actually really high last year for the whole season across all 3 teams. And also the last thing, going back to the free throws, he averaged 4 or more free throws for all of last season, which is pretty good for somebody, again, playing on a torn quad, and averaged even more free throws while on the Heat. It ballooned up to 4.5. So this is stuff that I should have mentioned earlier on, but I felt like I had to bring up now because it's like those are some damn good indicators, man, for it to be playing like that in the state that he was.